In Providence, Rhode Island, a master locksmith discovers his security systems being used against him. A midnight intrusion becomes a nightmare of his own making. From the depths of my collection, the Nightmare Maestro brings you a tale that will make you question whether the locks on your doors are keeping danger out or trapping you inside. David Mueller stood in his workshop, surrounded by hundreds of keys hanging like metal wind chimes against the burgundy walls. The scent of metal shavings and lubricant oil permeated the air as his practiced hands manipulated another blank key. 23 years of experience had taught him every nuance of home security, every weakness in even the most sophisticated systems. The irony wasn't lost on him. How the very knowledge that made him Providence's most trusted locksmith also revealed every vulnerability in the fortresses he built. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he tested the new key in the lock cylinder. Perfect fit, as always. His reputation for precision had made him the go-to security expert in Rhode Island's historic districts, where centuries-old homes housed millions in art and antiquities. The weight of his specialized tools in his worn leather bag offered more comfort than his empty house ever could. 2 years had passed since Amy's death, and he'd thrown himself into his work with renewed intensity. Each lock installed was a promise of protection he couldn't keep for his own wife. Each security system, a futile attempt at redemption. The shelves of his workshop held every type of lock imaginable, from simple deadbolts to biometric scanners, each one a reminder of his failure that night. Tonight was different, though. As David catalogued his latest job, the Anderson residence on College Hill, his hands trembled slightly. The security plan he'd drawn up was flawless, as always. Top-of-the-line motion sensors, reinforced door frames, and a surveillance system that left no blind spots. But the notes he'd made about the system's weak points would fetch an excellent price from the right buyer, just like the others. Each vulnerability carefully documented. The 3-second delay in the backup power system, the blind spot in the northwest corner, the frequency the wireless sensors operated on. He pulled out his other notebook, the one with contact information for people who paid handsomely for such details. His fingers traced the leather cover, remembering Amy's screams, the sound of breaking glass, the helplessness. Now he made sure no one felt truly safe behind their locks and alarms. Security was an illusion, and he had become its master of deception. The autumn wind whistled through Providence's historic streets as David lay in his bed, surrounded by the sophisticated security system he'd crafted for himself. Motion sensors monitored every approach to his Victorian home, their subtle red lights blinking in the darkness. Electronic locks secured every entry point with military-grade encryption. Camera feeds, displayed on the tablet beside his bed, showed empty rooms and silent corridors, the night vision casting everything in an eerie green glow. Sleep eluded him, as it often did these days. The guilt gnawed at his consciousness, memories of Amy intertwining with thoughts of all the homes he'd compromised. Her favorite perfume sometimes seemed to linger in the hallway, a ghost of accusation. He told himself it was just business, a way to profit from both sides of the security equation. Install the systems, sell their vulnerabilities, repeat. The perfect scheme that had already netted him over $2 million. His security tablet chirped softly, movement at the perimeter. Probably another neighborhood cat. David watched as the infrared camera showed a dark figure moving with purpose toward his front door. His pulse quickened as a second figure appeared, then a third. Their movements were too precise, too knowing. No random burglars moved like that. A soft click echoed through the house. David's eyes snapped open wider. It was the distinct sound of his custom-designed front door lock being manipulated with expert precision. Another click followed, then another. Someone was methodically disabling his security system, using techniques that felt disturbingly familiar. They knew about the secondary tumbler, the one he'd added specifically to thwart lock-picking attempts. They even knew the exact pressure needed to prevent the silent alarm from triggering. His own innovations were being used against him, executed with the same precision he'd taught his clients in their security consultations. The tablet showed more dark figures entering through the kitchen door, moving like shadows through his home. His fortress was being breached by people who knew its every secret. David's breath caught in his throat as he watched the security tablet. One by one, each camera feed went dark. Not with the sudden cut of amateur tampering, but with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly where to find the hidden backup power supplies, his own innovations being used against him. They even knew about the redundant wireless system he'd installed after Amy's death, a feature he'd never documented officially. He slipped out of bed, bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The house he'd transformed into an impenetrable fortress now felt like a maze with no exit. Years of installing security systems had taught him every trick for silent movement. The third floorboard from the wall always creaked. He stepped over it. Multiple sets of footsteps moved through his home with practiced efficiency. They knew exactly where to step to avoid the pressure sensors in the floorboards. From his hiding spot in the master bedroom closet, David's mind raced through his client list. The intruders had bypassed the auxiliary power unit in the basement, something only mentioned in his private notes. They'd disabled the cellular backup system that would have alerted the police. Even the hidden cameras in the decorative molding had gone dark. Each breach of his security followed the same patterns he'd sold to countless criminals. The smell of autumn leaves drifted through an open window, one that had definitely been locked earlier. Someone had used the exact technique he'd developed for forcing window locks without leaving traces. The night air carried whispered voices and the soft scrape of professional-grade tools against metal. These weren't ordinary burglars. They moved like professionals who'd studied his security designs intimately. The realization hit him like ice water in his veins. They weren't here to steal. They were here for him. The intruders' whispered voices carried through the heating vents. David recognized them with growing horror. Mr. Peterson from Oak Street, whose art collection had been stolen 3 months after installation. The Whitman couple from Hope Street, who'd lost their safe full of jewelry. Mrs. Mitchell from Benefit Street, whose home invasion had made local headlines. All clients whose homes he'd secured and whose security details he'd sold to the highest bidder. They moved like a coordinated unit, led by a figure whose gait seemed hauntingly familiar. The beam of a flashlight revealed his face. James Morrison, the man whose wife had died in a home invasion 6 months ago, despite David's guaranteed security system, the system whose weaknesses David had sold just weeks before the tragedy. Morrison's face was gaunt, transformed by grief into something harder, colder. David's hands trembled as he accessed the hidden wall safe behind his clothes. Inside lay proof of every transaction, every betrayal. Detailed notes on security weaknesses, payments received, dates of subsequent break-ins. He had to destroy it before they found it. The metallic taste of fear filled his mouth as he heard them methodically searching each room, checking every hiding spot he'd ever recommended to clients. But as he reached for the safe's handle, a floorboard creaked behind him. He'd been so focused on the group below, he'd missed the footsteps approaching his position. The same mistake Amy had made that night. The same fatal error of assuming safety behind locked doors. His own teachings used as weapons against him. "Looking for these, David?" James Morrison's voice was eerily calm as he held up a familiar leather notebook. David's transaction records. Every client, every security flaw sold, every resulting crime, documented in his own meticulous handwriting. Morrison's wedding ring caught the dim light, a reminder of everything David's schemes had destroyed. The other homeowners emerged from the shadows, their faces a mix of betrayal and cold determination. They'd found the evidence weeks ago, launched their own investigation. David's schemes had left a trail. Too many random burglaries targeting homes he'd secured, too many security systems failing in exactly the same ways. They'd connected the dots he'd thought were safely hidden behind his reputation. "We trusted you," Mrs. Mitchell said, her voice shaking with rage. "We paid you to protect our homes, our families." The Whitmans stood close together, their expressions mirroring the violation they'd felt when their home was breached. Peterson's hands clenched and unclenched, 20 years of collected art lost because of David's betrayal. David backed against the wall, his security expertise useless against people he'd taught himself. "Amy's death," he stammered. I couldn't protect her. I had to prove that no one was truly safe, that all security was an illusion." The words sounded hollow even to him, excuses for a crime spree born of grief and twisted logic. Morrison stepped closer, the notebook held like evidence in a trial. "My Catherine died because of you," he said softly. "Because you sold our security plans to the highest bidder. She trusted your systems, just like Amy trusted you." David's sophisticated security system chirped its final warning before dying completely, plunging the house into darkness. The backup generators remained silent. They'd been disabled with the same methodical precision he'd taught in his advanced security workshops. The group of betrayed clients moved with practiced coordination, implementing containment protocols he'd taught them himself. The ultimate betrayal. His expertise turned into a weapon against its creator. "How many others?" Morrison demanded, his voice tight with controlled rage. He held up a second notebook, this one bound in black leather and filled with future targets. Names, addresses, detailed security layouts, a roadmap of planned betrayals stretching into the coming months. Each page contained the same meticulous notes that had made David Providence's most respected locksmith. "Some of these dates go years into the future. You were never going to stop, were you?" David's eyes darted between his former clients, searching for mercy and finding none. The Whitmans blocked the bedroom door with the same stance he'd taught them for home defense. Mrs. Mitchell monitored the windows using the observation patterns from his security seminars. Peterson guarded the hallway, positioned at the exact angle David had once demonstrated as optimal for controlling access points, all using the same protective formation he'd recommended in his home defense consultations. "It started after Amy," David whispered, his back pressed against the mahogany panels of his bedroom wall. His fingers traced the familiar pattern of the wood grain. Behind it lay another safe, one they hadn't found yet. The burglars who killed her, they knew exactly how to get in, because I'd sold them the plans to our security system. The confession hung in the air like poison. I couldn't live with the guilt. So I convinced myself that if everyone was vulnerable, if no one could feel truly safe, somehow that would make it right. Every time I installed a new system, I proved that safety was an illusion, that we're all just pretending. Morrison stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the room like an accusation. "Each of us trusted you to protect our homes, our families. Instead, you turned our faith into a weapon. My Catherine died because of your illusion." The others moved in, a circle of judgment tightening around their prey. Now you'll understand what it feels like to be trapped in a security system designed to fail. Morning light crept through the windows of David Muller's empty house. The police found his detailed records exactly where Morrison's group had left them, spread across his desk like a confession. Every security system he'd compromised, every vulnerability he'd sold, every family he'd betrayed, documented in his own meticulous handwriting. The leather notebooks filled an entire evidence box, each page a testament to his methodical destruction of trust. They never found David. The investigation revealed the true scope of his operation. Over 300 homes across New England, their security systems meticulously installed and then secretly undermined. Detective Amy Mitchell, no relation to his former client, traced the pattern of break-ins following David's installations. Some clients had lost possessions, artworks, jewelry, family heirlooms. Others, like Catherine Morrison, had lost their lives. The dates in his notebooks matched perfectly with reported home invasions spanning the past 2 years. The group of vigilantes disappeared as expertly as they'd appeared, using the very techniques David had taught them. No security camera in Providence caught their movements. No alarm system detected their presence. They left behind only his notebooks and a single message carved into his workshop door. No lock can protect a corrupted soul. But they'd left something else too, something the police didn't find until weeks later. Hidden behind that mahogany panel in David's bedroom, the last safe contained a final confession, a detailed account of Amy's death, written in his shaking hand. I sold our security plans to prove I could, to show I was smarter than the system. I killed my wife with my arrogance, and then I killed others to hide from that truth. Tonight, my past has come to collect its due. If you're reading this, remember, the most dangerous predators are the ones you invite through your front door. Today, David Muller's house stands empty on its quiet Providence street. Would-be buyers are turned away by whispered stories of the locksmith who turned security into a weapon. The systems he installed still guard its walls, their red lights blinking in the darkness. But something else lurks behind those locks, a legacy of betrayal that proves the greatest danger isn't always on the outside trying to get in. Local locksmiths report a curious trend: former clients of Mueller's constantly checking and rechecking their security systems, installing camera after camera, lock after lock. But no amount of security can protect them from the truth he taught them. Sometimes, the person holding the keys is the one you should fear most. In Providence, they say, every locksmith's credentials is now scrutinized with paranoid intensity. Every security expert viewed with suspicion. David Muller may have vanished, but his legacy lives on in every nervous glance at a locked door, every moment of doubt when a security system arms, every question about who you can really trust to keep you safe. Sometimes, the most secure locks are the ones that stay uninstalled. If this tale of twisted security and betrayal kept you checking your locks, make sure to subscribe for more chilling tales from the Nightmare Maestro that will make you question everything you trust. Share your own home security nightmares in the comments below, and don't forget to pass this story along to fellow horror enthusiasts who appreciate that sometimes the most terrifying tales are the ones that could actually happen. Remember, not all monsters hide in the shadows. Some of them come with references and professional certifications.